Peters. I'm the Senior Vice President of Getty Business Development at Getty Images, and I'm at Luminance 2012. There is a user base for our content that is much broader than it's ever been. But I don't think that the licensing approaches and the platforms that are enabling that publishing have come together to offer a solution that really works to the benefit of a content owner.
Thanks, Alan. And thank you all for attending today, and thanks for PhotoShelter for putting on this event. I'm going to do my best to entertain you for 20 minutes, and doing that around my topic will be a challenge. But before I get into my topic, I thought I would start just with a little background. A little background on Getty Images, a little background on my role at Getty Images, and a little background on myself. I think that'll help frame the topic. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Getty Images, we are the leading B2B marketplace for digital content. We connect content owners with content creators through a marketplace, a number of marketplaces that we operate. We license photos, we license videos, we license music, we license creative imagery, stock photo, all the way through to editorial content, so the latest in entertainment, sport, and news. We represent 100,000 plus content owners out there, and we service more than 1 million businesses a year in licensing that content. So that's a little bit about Getty Images. A little bit about me. I'm the Senior Vice President of Business Development. Business development can mean a lot of things in a lot of different companies, but what my role is essentially threefold. Me and my team are responsible for looking at the marketplace and identifying opportunities and changes in the marketplace. We're then responsible for building strategies that try to address those. And then the third piece is actually implementing those strategies through either business innovation and incubation, through partnerships, or through acquisitions. So that's basically what I've been doing at Getty for the last 3 years. I took a few months off over the last couple months to work on selling the company, but now I'm back, hopefully going to get focused on doing the real work that needs to get done. Before I was in this role, I actually worked at Getty for a couple years, helping to run the video business, helping to run the music business, and our digital asset management business. Before that, as Alan mentioned, I was really in media and technology, so I haven't been in this industry all that long. It's been about 5 years. And my background is one where I was heading up strategy and business development, one of the internet's first publishing platforms. I also held roles where I led new media for some of the larger media companies and content owners out there. So I think that background, the intent of me walking you through that isn't that I want to talk about myself, but I want to give you a little bit, because I'm going to go out past Getty here. I'm going to take a little bit of a leap of faith and talk about things that you might say, where does he get off talking about that subject? So that's what I'm going to do. So the final preface that I'll say is I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to talk about a little bit of a legal subject here, but I'm not going to talk about it from a lawyer's point of view. I'm going to talk about it from a commercial point of view. My job here today is to advance a commercial solution to a legal problem. Okay? So that's me, a little bit of preface. Having said all that about me, I wanted to get a little bit of feel for the audience here today. So I wanted to ask you some questions. First of all, since I've said I'm not a lawyer, I want to understand who are the lawyers in the audience. So do we have any lawyers out there? Okay, you're outnumbered. Good. Photographers, content owners, good number there. I think this will be relevant. Content licensing, others in the industry, excellent. And then technology / platform, however you want to, right? And then good mix. Other people that just here for the free coffee? Okay. All right. Well, that's very helpful for me as I kind of preface my remarks. I'll tell you, I haven't practiced the thing, so I can actually customize, hopefully, to a little bit of the audience mix here. So what is my topic? As the slide would suggest, it's copyright. But I don't want to talk about copyright in a broad sense. I want to talk about it in a fairly narrow sense. And I want to talk about copyright in terms of content licensing, so copyright licensing. And I want to talk about how the traditional paradigms of content licensing are being broken down by digital changes. And I want to offer, one, my view on that disconnect. I want to offer some vision on a solution that I think can address that and take our industry forward to the benefit of all stakeholders. And I'll probably try to share a little bit about maybe some steps that are already happening in that direction. So that's my objective for today. I will start that with, again, just a little more context to say I'm making two assumptions in this speech. And if you disagree with them, we can talk about it during the Q&A section. One of them is that content owners largely want to be paid for the use of their content. Creative Commons is doing some fantastic stuff to allow people to use content for free. And I think that's a great opportunity. But I think my premise is that those that spend the time, effort, and passion to create content, when it gets utilized, they not only want credit, but they actually would like to be rewarded for that monetarily. So that's assumption number one. Assumption number two is that the vast majority of individuals and businesses actually want to live in a world where there is copyright. They actually want to honor it, respect it. I think there's a small minority that thinks copyright has no place in this world, but they are in the minority. I think if we give individuals and businesses the awareness of copyright and a way to actually adhere to that actually makes sense for them, I think they'll embrace it wholeheartedly. So those are the two assumptions I'm making. Like I said, we can come back if we want to challenge any of those. So what is the disconnect? Well, in order to do it, I need to take you back before it existed. And I'm going to take you back not as far as that photo might imply. I'm only going to take you back to maybe the mid-2000s. And in the mid-2000s, the world, I will say the world worked for content owners and content creators. Content creators were largely large media companies. The people working within them had titles like photo editor, producer. They knew where to go to license content, whether that was Getty or Shutterstock or any of those places that are out there. They had systems and processes in place that could manage rights. Right? They had an awareness of copyright. They knew what their role was and how they fit into the ecosystem. And because they typically aggregated a decent-sized audience and a large number of advertisers, they had budgets. They could buy photos up front. And that world worked. It worked for content owners. They got paid. And it worked for content creators and media publishers that were trying to reach audiences because they had access to a wide set of content that they could make a better product with, and they had that with very limited legal risk. Okay? So that's a world that I would say worked. Some of the people in this argument, might argue that it didn't work all that well for them, but I think it worked largely for the industry. Let's fast forward to today and a new world. And it's a world where we have new publishing platforms like YouTube and Facebook and Flickr and Tumblr. Today, the world is open for anybody to publish. I can create, publish, tweet, like, share, pin content easily. Any individual can do that. Within minutes, I can create my own video, I can create my own blog, create my own website, create my own photo gallery, and I can have the potential to share that with billions of people. That's pretty powerful, pretty powerful. And that is fundamentally changing the media landscape. This is a slide from 2011 that GoGlobe put out there. I think it's a little dated now, but I think it still gets the point across. It has fundamentally just added to the cacophony of noise that's out in the media space and who can contribute to that cacophony. And I think, I won't talk to all the stats on this slide, but I'll give you a couple. Those platforms that were on the other page now represent about half of the internet engagement that's out there. About half. That's an amazing number. Facebook alone has about 1 trillion page views a month. 1 trillion page views a month. To put that in context, 3 of Getty Images' largest digital media customers are CNN, People.com, and ESPN.com. They have less than 1% of what Facebook is generating in a month. I mean, just massive, massive scale flowing through these platforms. And so what that creates is a new world of media, a new world of content creation and publishing. It's a world where anybody with a laptop, a tablet, a smartphone, sitting on a park bench or in a coffee shop has the opportunity to engage and attract an audience. An audience that could be small and niche, an audience that could be huge and large. And that should be great things for those of you out in the audience that are photographers and content creators and content owners. It should be fantastic. More people using more content, right? The issue is that guy sitting on the park bench doesn't know squat about copyright, doesn't know where to go to license content, typically has no ability to manage copyright and the processes and all of the things that go along with working with licensed content, and has no budget. Typically, the platform that they are working with is the one monetizing the content, right? When I go to put something on Facebook, Facebook's the one making the money off of that. When I put something on YouTube, YouTube's the one largely making the money off of that. So the monetization layer is different, and the monetization approaches are different in where that sits. So instead of this being great for us right now, I think we've got a bit of that disconnect. And where does that disconnect lead? It leads to what I call the world of the right click. And this is an example, and I wish I could say this was a hard example to pull together, but it was all too easy. This is an example from Getty Images. Upper left there is our website showing some images of Adele from the MTV Music Awards. Over on the right is actually one of our customers that licensed that image from Getty Images, put it on their website, and was serving ads around it. The bottom three are just examples of that exact same content showing up on Pinterest, showing up on YouTube, and showing up on Last.fm and their community photo galleries, posted by individuals, not referencing the original license, not referencing Getty Images, just utilized. The power of the right click. The content is out there, it's easily accessible, I can take it, I can use it, and no benefit back to the content owner, right? I wish I could say that's a harmless crime. I think this room, based on the hands that went up, will agree with me. It's not. These platforms are competing for the exact same audience and the exact same advertisers and the exact same dollars that the traditional licensors of content have been competing for. And that is not a harmless crime. It's not, it's a game where if that money flows, right, there needs to be a benefit of where it's flowing from. So I'd also argue, though, and I'll go back to my original assumptions, I'd argue that it's not only bad for the content owners, I'd argue it's bad for the individuals that are taking this content. They're exposing themselves to copyright risk. They're also not benefiting from all of the content that's being created. They're kind of, searching it, finding it, right-clicking it, but they're not having access to all of the wealth of tools, search, and everything that's out there that was traditionally and has been continually utilized by traditional media. And third, I'd argue it's not in the interest of these platforms. They are sitting behind things like safe harbor provision today, which say, it's not me, it's the user. That's not in the interest of the platform. It's not in the interest of their investors. It's not in the interest of them building a viable advertising vehicle or business model around it, because people want to be where they know the content is safe and the content's viable and legal. And third, I think they aren't providing the full service that they want to provide to their audience. They aren't giving them access to all that content within the platforms themselves, making it a richer experience, producing better content. So if this isn't ideal for anybody, right, I guess the question is then what's the solution? And I don't think, this might be a little controversial in this room, but I don't think this is the solution. I don't think SOPA or similar activities are the right way. One, the internet's global, governments aren't. It won't work. right? You have to be global. The internet is a reality. We're not putting that back in the box. So we need one kind of worldwide approach. Two, we need an approach that's going to evolve with the internet. Legislation tends to be static. It doesn't evolve. And I think that the reality is that we couldn't have predicted the world we're in today. We can't predict the world we're going to be in tomorrow. And we certainly can't predict the world we're going to be in 5 years from now. And we need something that evolves. And that is not typically legislation. The third reason I would say is look, legislation is not designed by the experts. The experts are in this room. The experts in this case are in this room. So I think the best approach is one that's led by the stakeholders of the solution. But it's going to take change. It's going to take compromise in order for us to get there. So what does that solution look like? And I'm just going to touch on high level of what I think that solution looks like today. One, I think it needs to be comprehensive. There is no way that we can send an individual or a platform off to deal with all of the licensing platforms that are out there and all the individual content owners. Go cut deals with all of us. That's impossible, right? It's just too many. While we might aggregate 100,000 plus and Shutterstock might aggregate, I don't know what, tens of thousands or whatever and there are a whole bunch of content owners that don't go through our systems. There are a whole bunch that are even broader than that. We're talking about millions and millions. And it's just not feasible for us to go ask individuals or platforms to deal with us in that case. So that's one. Two, I don't think it can be prefaced on the individual making an upfront payment for content, paying for the content. They aren't the ones making the money off of their content that they're creating in many, many cases. Now, there might be some approaches where that works, but I think the vast majority of cases that I'm talking about here and the vast majority of that engagement in those page views and the wealth that's being created from this content doesn't fall into that. So I don't think we can preface it on that, and I think it would be almost impossible to educate that many people in the time necessary to do it. I think the third one is that I think the content platforms need to step out from behind things like safe harbor provisions and proactively engage if a solution is put in front of them that does work and that does scale. So that's number three. Number four is we need to come up with new business models. The reality is this is a much more fragmented world than traditional media. The economics are fundamentally different. And we need to create business models that work with these platforms, not stand on traditional models that worked for traditional media. And that doesn't mean we have to destroy value that we create. It means that we need to think a little bit differently. And I'll use some examples here. These are not necessarily the ones that I think need to be applied, but I'll use some examples. One is revenue sharing, where there is revenue. And I think some of these platforms have significant revenue. Another is, cost per view. So every time one of our images is viewed, we get paid. Tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, we didn't create a whole bunch of value. But that scales with these platforms over time. And so whether it's used by one individual speaking to a very narrow niche audience or used by one that's speaking to billions, the value is measured by that reach. So I think we need to innovate on some business models and think about our business models differently if we're going to actually solve this problem. The fifth thing that I think we need to do is we need to look at it through a technology lens. The scale of the problem is immense. We need to make sure that we have technology that scales to it. It is not realistic to not have this be a technology-based solution. So those are my 5 principles. We can talk more about if those match up to the way you see it. I would say that, going through those 5, they sound pretty weighty. It sounds like actually Washington might have a better chance of solving the problem than us solving those 5 things together. And that says a lot when you think about the dysfunction in Washington. But I get hope when I look at YouTube and Google. Google's actually already done this. They haven't done it in photos, but they did it in video and they did it in music. They wanted to solve this problem. They had a stake. Remember, we go back. They have a stake in solving the problem. They had a bunch of copyrighted material on their platform. I've already showed you some of our photos that are out there that aren't in this, but they had a bunch of content. And they had to create a way for content owners to say, I'll either let it go up or I want it down. And if it goes up, I want to share the revenue. They've put that in place. The rumor mill says that, you know, YouTube has $1 billion plus in revenue. About 350 million or so flows through this platform, where content owners, where their music or their video is being utilized within YouTube, royalties are going back to those content owners. It's not dependent upon the individual paying for the content up front. The individual doesn't need to know anything about copyright, although Google is educating them. And I think this is a good model. It's not one that's been broadly applied, but I think it's a very, very good model, and it gives me hope that we can, as a collective community of platforms, content owners, content marketplaces, start working towards a solution that resembles this, although it may not be this in each and every case. And so what is Getty Images doing about this? And I don't want this to be a pitch about Getty, because I don't think there's one company that can solve this. But I do think Getty has a role. I think we are a large stakeholder in this. I think we represent a lot of content owners. I think we deal with a lot of companies that want this solved. And so I think we have an obligation as one of the larger financial enterprises in our industry, as well as one of the ones that has more technology resources than maybe some others in our industry, to advance a solution. And so my solution, you know, I've kind of painted out the direction that we want to go from a strategic standpoint. What we are doing is, one, last year we bought PicScout. And when we bought that, we bought a technology that allowed us to identify images being utilized across the internet. We also bought a company that was trying to advance a registry. And that registry saying, here's an image, here's who owns that image. Merging those two together can create the base of something very similar to what YouTube has done with Content ID. I think we have that core technology in place now, and we've made that registry open, and we've made that technology available via open APIs. The next thing that we've done is we've started already working on all those crazy complex business models. Some of you may have signed some of our contracts and seen some language changes. You know, we've been working on this for 18 months to try to make sure that we have the flexibility to be able to go and proactively create business models that work in this. And we've done all the back-end infrastructure to make that work. So I think we're in a situation at Getty where we can now offer a solution out to the marketplace. It may not be one that everyone wants to participate in. It's one that we hope a lot of people do. So we're trying to take steps in that direction. This past week, we announced a relationship with a company called Spark Rebel, which is in one of those content community platforms that's actually going to be using this solution to make sure that content that gets uploaded to their platform is safe, and they can monetize over the top of it, and the content owners that own that content get rewarded. So that is just, you know, our role in the process. We certainly hope that others come aboard. I'll be here. Some of my team, I think, is out here. So for those that want to speak after Q&A, we can do that. So thank you.
I have 3 questions going from sort of easy to harder.
All right.
The first, you know, we had a conversation a couple years ago, and one of the takeaways that I had, you said in certain categories, we simply don't need any more images. Mm-hmm. And I guess since a lot of these people are photographers, can you talk about the categories where you see a constant need for images?
You know, I mean, the easy answer on that is anything that reflects a change in the world. You know, on the editorial side of things, obviously we're constantly needing to cover events. Now, we need to cover that from varied points of view, a depth and a breadth. But at some point, you know, you have enough photos to cover that. But we need to continually replenish and cover the world that we do on the editorial side. On the creative side of things, you know, similarly, I mean, you can think about, you know, just the skyline of New York changing, which is the most obvious and often given. But, you know, clearly contemporary trends. You know, what are people wearing?
Right.
I'm out of date. You know, I'm dated stock, but you know, just making sure that we're reflecting the world. I would say the biggest area that we are continuing under, we lack content in is you know, in our international markets. So over half of our business is outside of North America. And our content, you know, is one where we continually need more and more international content to reflect those worlds and those cultures and those individuals and trends that are unique to those markets.
You showed the photo of Adele as being one image that's infringed upon pretty recently.
Yeah.
Some of the most popular content that I think we've all seen on Facebook are these graphical memes where a photo of Kayla from the Olympics is appropriated or misappropriated, and then text is laid over it, and it becomes very popular. I wanted to get sort of your personal take on these cultural memes that become very funny in a lot of cases, and then what the corporate stance would be on something like that.
Well, I think my own personal view is I laugh at a lot of them, and some of them I find tasteless, and so they kind of vary. But I think my personal view is you can't stop that phenomenon.
Yeah.
You can't stop people wanting to work with content, create content, and engage with an audience, whether that's their family or their friends or something broader. So I think that Pandora's box is open, and I think we need to embrace it. So that's my own personal view. I think our company view is very similar. I think we need to wrap the commercial aspects around that. I think we have to respect the copyright owner and what they intended with that work, and I think that's where things like putting a registry together and saying, yeah, I'm fine opting my content into that world, or I'm fine, standing outside of that world is what we need to do, and we need the participation of those platforms to be part of that solution, rather than just kind of allowing it to happen and nobody kind of taking ownership over that. So I think we have to embrace it, know that it's going to happen, and then figure who wants to participate and be part of a solution and who doesn't. And I think there are certain works and certain artists that don't want to participate in that, don't want to see their work mangled up and mashed up and changed. So.
Okay, last tough question.
All right.
PhotoShelter tried to do a marketplace a few years ago, which kind of failed miserably. But one of the propositions that we were trying to bring to the table was a larger percentage cut to the photographer.
Yep.
We found pretty quickly that there are obvious business costs like marketing and editing, where the marketplace itself has that overhead, and therefore some cut needs to go back to that marketplace, like a Getty. I've seen a shift in talking to a lot of photographers where Getty keeps saying, over the course of the years, we're going to take a little bit more, we're going to take a little bit more. And I would figure that economies of scale would allow you to maintain a percentage to give to the photographers. Can you, in 30 seconds address why that's happening?
In 30 seconds. I would say, look, your comment about the cost to operate these marketplaces is accurate.
Yep.
And it's going up, not down. The marketing cost, the international component, putting technologies and processes in place like this are not cheap. I will not shy away from the fact that, say, we're a profitable company, and that is our objective, is to deliver a profit back to our shareholders. So, we need to make a profit, and we're not shy about saying that. I would just challenge the fact that our royalties have been changing over time. I just sat through a process where as part of selling the company, we looked at our gross margins over time. They're basically the same. And our gross margin, is the royalties that we pay back to contributors. So on a percentage of sales, ours have been flat. We have changed how we do that, where we do that, who we reward, how we reward them, to get the right content, to get the right rights, to build the right products and services to take to market. But I would argue with the premise that we've actually been, taking more and keeping more. But I do think we have been, as we try to scale our business, we have been investing more, and I think that's what we'll continue to do. And for those that, want to be part of Getty and see that return, we're happy to have them aboard. And those that don't, I think there's plenty of alternatives out there, and I think that's a good thing for the industry.
Cool.
So.
Craig Peters.
Thank you.
Thank you.